Hello and welcome back to X's and O's. I am your one of your co-hosts, Peter Borkowski, joined as always by our other co-host, Mr. Bubba Hayes. Bubba, how are we? Oh, fire truck or ambulance. Bubba, besides that, how are we doing this fine, what's today? Tuesday afternoon.
Doing pretty well, hopefully better than the person on the other end of that fire truck or ambulance.
Well, we live across the street from a
Oh,
nursing facility,
yikes.
so it is a
Might be
common
somebody's time.
that's one way to put it. It is a common noise. So, anyways, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the NFL, which is kicking off very soon. The always uh exciting Hall of Fame game was last Thursday. It was on Thursday, I believe. Um, and then preseason kicks off on August 13th, which is Thursday. And then the regular season, I should have looked up these dates beforehand. The regular season is on September 9th. So
Yeah, to
less
be
than a
the
month out,
weekend after
less
Labor Day.
couple of days out from preseason and less than a month out from the regular season. I guess preseason has kind of already started if you count
Yeah.
the Hall of Fame game, but whatever. So before preseason starts, before every team gets injured to hell and back, some teams already are. Looking at you, San Francisco. Um, I'm telling you, the electrical substation
I
theory
knew
is
you were gonna
real.
say it.
It's real, man. I don't know how you can refute it. But before teams really get messed up with injuries, if they're going to, we're going to talk through our most interesting story or the storylines we're intrigued in going into the season instead of a kind of stock
Yeah.
bog standard prediction. We're just going to go through some storylines that interest us. Some of them will be predictions, some of them won't be, and yeah, we'll kind of go from there. So we each came to the table with five. We're going to try to get through three each just between time, and there might be some overlap in storylines. Um, but Bubba, as kind of per usual, I'm going to let you kick us off here with uh, any of them. I don't know if they're ranked, could be number one, whatever you want to start us off with here.
Okay. So yeah, I guess one of the I think the top storylines that I'm interested in, and I guess just for the sake of time, I'll try and combine two of mine. So there's definitely some teams I would say that are kind of on the hot seat. Not necessarily meaning their coaches are, but just like, they're clearly set up for success and they just need to either push farther than they've been or, actually get something done. So one of the teams that I kind of think this is a really big year for is the Bengals and Joe Burrow and kind of all of their, setup they have. I mean, obviously, offense has not really been their problem the last several years. It's really been, can their offense stay healthy and can they give up less than 50 points a game? And so really, I think this is a year that it's kind of now or never. I don't want to say it that starkly, but it kind of feels like it that way. They've missed the playoffs, I think 3 or 4 years in a row now. And obviously a couple of those years they've dealt with injuries, especially with Burrow. So it really seems like now is kind of the year where they're going to have to find a way to get into the playoffs and kind of at least make a little bit of a run because they haven't done anything since they made the Super Bowl kind of, surprisingly, whatever that was, I think it was 21 or 22.
20, it
Um,
was 21, yeah, I
so
believe. Yeah,
it might have been
21 or
22.
it was 22. It was 21
Yeah.
going into 22.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the year goes for them. I like several of the players on their team, and I would like to see them do well, but they're definitely going to have to figure it out this year. Also, I think in a similar boat, but obviously, have achieved more recent success. The 49ers and the Bills, like both of these teams are built to win Super Bowls, have been for many years now. Electrical substation conspiracy theories, aside, this is really, the time for both of these teams. One of them has to get to the Super Bowl and win it. I mean, you know, obviously the 49ers have the roster to make it happen and the Bills do as well, but especially for Josh Allen, there's just, I think with each passing year, just kind of mounting pressure to get deeper than they have before. And it really seems, every year happens and they're pretty good in the regular season, last year aside, sort of. It's time for one of those two teams to also sort of finally get it done because you would have thought that once, the Chiefs had a down year, that would be their times. And both of them kind of failed to take the mantle. So this is kind of almost a now or never year for them as well, I feel like.
Yeah, I think I'm looking. The Bills were 12-5 last year, bowed out to they end up losing to in the playoffs. I forgot. It's the Broncos. Yeah, it's the Broncos.
Yeah, on
Um,
the last play or something like that, because that
yeah,
was when Wentz hurt himself.
Bengals were 6-11, and then the Niners were 12-5, which was third in their division. But then
Yeah.
who did they lose to? They didn't lose to the Eagles, did they? I don't think so.
They might have.
They might have. It was them or the Rams. No, it wasn't the Rams. Um, I always the Seahawks. They
Oh,
lost to the
yeah,
Seahawks.
they got clobbered by the Seahawks. Yeah.
Yeah, they got murdered. Um, yeah, I mean it's there for all them. I would say in terms of regular season, I would kind of lean on the Bengals, or I want to see the most out of them because I
Yeah.
mean the Niners are in maybe the toughest division in football.
Mm,
It's the NFC West or North, I would say. The Bills have an easier division, but they still have the Patriots, who I we'll talk about them later, I'm sure,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
I will talk about them later.
Yeah.
And then the Bengals, the AFC North is kind of in a weird spot right now. So, um, I think the Bengals have the easiest path to the playoffs
Yeah, that's fair.
of those three teams. But yeah, can Joe Burrow can he stay healthy? Because yeah, when he's healthy, he's electric.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously, the defense and it's an interesting. I know you said not necessarily the coach, but I'm sure a lot of eyes are going to be on Zach Taylor because
Yeah.
outside of that Super Bowl run, he hasn't done anything after being
Yeah.
considered, the wonder child.
Yep.
Um, and he's had some leeway because of the injuries, but still,
Yeah.
even when they are healthy, it's still not the greatest product. So, yeah, I think in terms of regular season, I think the Bengals have the easiest path. In terms of getting to the Super Bowl, I think it's got to be the Bills. Like, if you wanted me to pick one boom or bust team, it would be the Bills.
Yeah.
The Niners are going to they already have run into injury problems. The Bengals, um, even if they stay healthy, I don't know how good they'll be.
Yeah.
The Bills, besides the new head coach, who was an internal hire, Joe Brady, they're returning a lot of last year's team. Obviously, Josh Allen is Josh Allen. It's really the only thing he has left to add to his resume as a Super Bowl appearance, nonetheless a win. So, um, yeah, those three are going to be interesting. This kind of leads into one of mine a little bit.
Okay.
No, I don't think any of these teams really qualify for it, but every year we see, I'd say at least two to three teams really make a jump. Um, Worst to first, third to first, worst to wild card, whatever it may be. Last year was obviously, the Bears and Patriots, who I also want to talk about later.
The
So I guess
Jags were
my
pretty good.
Jags kind of made a huge jump, or they did make a huge jump, 13-4. I think it's kind of they get a little lost in just how good their season was.
Yeah.
Because in the AFC they got overshadowed by the Patriots.
Yep.
Um, so of the what teams are we kind of looking at this year to make that jump? So
Okay.
in terms of worst place teams, it doesn't have to be a worst place team, but in terms of worst place teams, we're looking at Jets, Browns, Titans, and Raiders from the AFC. And then the NFC, we got Giants, Lions, Saints, Cardinals. I don't know if the Lions really count because they were still above
Yeah.
500. Um,
And we
but
know what they're capable of.
still they were worst technically. Um, Even though being worse at 9-8 is not too shabby. Um, so yeah, I guess that's just the question is where do we think, you know, what's gonna be that surprise team? Um, in terms of my answer, if we're looking exclusively at worst place teams right now, um, I think I think I might be higher on them than most, but the Saints I think are gonna
Okay.
be really interesting. Um, I like Kellen Moore. I thought he did a really good job for what he had after being kind of a consolation prize of a hire. I would
Yeah.
say. Tyler Shuck was surprisingly good for being a 45-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
Um, he wasn't 45, but yeah. Um, and the NFC South is always kind of a shithole
Crapshoot.
of a
Yeah.
division. I mean, the Panthers won it at eight. Three of their teams were 8-9. And the only one of those three who I think could kind of cross that barrier into being a really good team is the Bucks. But they're always up and down between Baker's play and just Todd Bowles is not the most inspiring coach, in my opinion. The Falcons, I don't know who's playing quarterback. I mean, both of their quarterbacks, Penix and Tua, have severe injury histories. And then, the Panthers were up and coming. I'm still not completely sold on Bryce Young, so I don't
Yeah.
know if they keep moving in that direction. I think it's there for the Saints. If I had to pick one kind of worst place team to jump ahead of everyone else in their division, it would probably be the Saints. If I'm looking not at worst place, I- I'm interested to see what the Colts do if um
Right.
Daniel Jones.
Yep.
I knew his name was Daniel Dimes. I couldn't remember his last name. Daniel Jones does not get injured when he got injured because they were
Yeah.
rolling up until
Yeah, they
that
were.
point.
Yeah, they
And
were.
then they brought in your favorite player of all time to replace him. Um,
No.
So I think if he could stay healthy, yes, they have to go through the Jags. Yes, they have to go through the Texans, who CJ Stroud aside always have a good defense, or had
Yeah.
an amazing defense. But if Jones can stay healthy, I could see them making a jump too.
Yeah, I think it is interesting in their case because last year, they were really the surprise that I don't remember what exactly the record was, but they were like 7-2 or something
Yeah,
close to that. And I mean, to be fair, Daniel Jones was kind of playing at a level we've never seen before from him.
right.
So you do kind of wonder, like, was that kind of going to be his career year, or is this, how's he going to respond to the injury? But they have enough pieces around him where it's not solely dependent on him either. So I do think that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I don't really have any confidence in any of those AFC last place teams you mentioned.
No,
The Lions, as you said, I almost feel like they don't necessarily count. Of those teams, I don't necessarily think they're going to be, you know, 500 or have a chance to make the playoffs, but I'm kind of interested to see how it goes with the Cardinals, just because I do like
mm,
some of the pieces they have, specifically Jeremiah Love. And they have some good receivers too. So I am kind of curious to see how that experiment goes with them this year. I think, in a couple years, if they go right, that could be interesting. But that does kind of tie into my next kind of storyline. And we can stick with the Cardinals as one of the teams, but you know, um, I feel like every year, every couple of years, there's kind of a breakout young QB who sort of, establishes himself, in that top tier. And I think there's probably a handful that you could say are going to be under that sort of spotlight this year. But my thing with them is I don't really have confidence in any one of them. So in that you could put Fernando Mendoza on the Raiders, Ward on the
mhm.
Titans, Carson Beck on the Cardinals, Drew Aller on the Jags, Klubnik on the Jets, and Ty Simpson on the Rams. Obviously, not all of those guys will be starting for any or some of the year. But I do think it is an interesting kind of thing to follow is which of those young QBs can kind of exceed or meet the expectations. I mean, if you're thinking of like Mendoza and Ward, obviously they were, two top one, two, three draft picks. So their expectations are obviously a lot higher. But to be honest with you, I don't really have a lot of confidence in either one of them at the NFL level. So I do think it'll be interesting to see, the development of Cam Ward this year under Robert Saleh. And obviously we'll see how it goes for Fernando Mendoza on the Raiders. But any of those other quarterbacks, like I think this is just kind of a weak year, I guess you could say, for kind of if you're looking for a QB to kind of usurp some of the maybe more aging guys. So I do think that is one thing that makes it a little bit difficult to see. And you could say the same thing with like the Browns with like their quarterback situation. Obviously, they have a couple different options. So I do think that is one thing that could be holding back some of those teams in your conversation of last to first or last to mediocrity is a lot of the times it takes a quarterback to kind of change the direction of the franchise. And I don't know that a lot of those teams have a quarterback that is going to be able to do that. Obviously, some of them, like the Raiders and the Titans, think they do, but I might be going against America here, but I kind of have my suspicions about a couple of them, how, well they're suited to be, solid NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, that kind of rolls into my next storyline, which I'll save for a second because it doesn't include Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward a lot. Um, I think he got a real shit draw. I mean, he was running for his life on a lot of those plays last year. And I don't know how much Tennessee really improved their offensive line this offseason,
Yeah.
but I don't think we've gotten a great look at him yet. And when we did, I thought he was, I don't think he was, oh my God, Joe Burrow level first overall pick, but I thought he showed enough that you also didn't go, they wasted a first overall pick on him. So I'm interested to see how he keeps going after that. They also brought, I mean, yes, Robert Sale is the head coach, but it's really going to be Brian Dable is their
Yeah.
OC. What can he do with him? I think Dable, I don't think was not great in New York, obviously. I think he also kind of got a shit hand, so I'm not
Yeah.
completely out the door on him. But those other guys you mentioned kind of rolls into my next storyline, which is just what's this QB class going to look like? Because
Yeah.
as we talked about post draft, it did seem like a weaker class.
Yeah.
I'm higher on Mendoza than you are. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, Patrick Mahomes level playmaker, but I think he can be kind of a Sam Darnold, steady hand. Um, you're not going to lose because of him. You might win it because of him occasionally, but he's just kind of a steady field general. You just have to build the right team around him.
Yeah.
I do like they're going to at least try and sit him behind Kirk Cousins. I don't know how long that's going to last. If Kirk keeps getting in fights with his teammates, probably not long, but
Yeah.
I do think that is the right developmental path for Mendoza is sit for a minute. I don't think he's ready to come in right away, even though I do think he's a pretty mature quarterback for a college
Yeah.
player. Ty Simpson obviously won't be starting anytime soon unless Stafford gets hurt or retires after this season, which injuries you never know. I don't see him retiring after this season unless it's just a really lousy year, which it shouldn't be for the Rams. I have them in one of my storylines. But
Yeah.
guys, kind of that next, not next tier, but the rest of the pack, those were some highly touted quarterbacks who fell down the draft order for whatever reason. Carson Beck ended up going round 3, which was actually higher than I thought he would go. Drew Aller was once considered, a top 3 pick. Cade Klubnik was considered very good. And then Garrett Nussmeier, who ended up going round 7, he won't play because he's on Kansas City, who's going to go with um, Fields until Mahomes is healthy,
Yeah.
supposedly. But those guys all have a chance. Beck's in Arizona had a pretty good Hall of Fame game. Take that as you will. And he's only sitting behind Jacoby Brissett, who, isn't terrible, but it's, not
Isn't.
super, it's not super exciting. Drew Aller's behind Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. A-Rod's probably um, one bad hit or one, uh, you know, demon summoning session away from being out of the league. Uh, Klubnik is
Only.
in Klubnik is in New York, the Jets. So there's always an opportunity there. Geno Smith is their starter right now, which great. Um,
Yeah.
the Browns also had Taylor Green, who they drafted, who was a really interesting prospect. And then Nussmeier I already talked about. So, of those kind of not next tier, the rest of the pack guys who were once really highly touted
Yeah.
quarterbacks, Klubnik's probably got a good chance to start. Beck's got a good chance to start. Aller, like I said, is one. He's got to get through Mason Rudolph too, but it's Mason Rudolph, so it's not, a super high wall to climb. Um, I'm interested to see if any of those guys did they have a bad college year, maybe that tank their draft stock, or are they more like what they were talked about a few years, just 2 seasons ago, even for some of
Mhm.
them. So I think this QB class is going to be really interesting in terms of kind of your statement about what young quarterbacks like can make that leap. He's in an interesting, I don't know about making a leap, but a lot of eyes are going to be on Jaden Daniels this year.
Yeah, I agree with
Um,
that.
I mean, an outstanding rookie season, won multiple playoff games. And then last year was derailed mostly by injury, but when he was healthy, he didn't look like rookie year Jaden
Yeah,
Daniels. Um, the Vikings obviously have two really interesting candidates with JJ McCarthy and Kyler Murray, who was just named the starter. Murray's looking for some redemption. McCarthy's still trying to get a solid foot in the door. Penix in Atlanta, can he stay healthy? If he
yeah,
does, is he the real deal? We haven't really seen a good sample size of him being fully healthy. And then in the AFC, I'm just kind of glancing through the Dolphins with Malik Willis now that he's a starter again. I don't think that's going to go super well. I think he's going to be kind of the example of outstanding backup who probably shouldn't be a starter.
yeah.
Um, that's just me. Does any of the 20 Browns quarterbacks turn into something? Does Deshaun return to form? Hopefully not, just because yuck. Um,
Yeah.
how do we already mentioned it? How does Daniel Jones bounce back? So yeah, in terms of who I bank on the most to do that, gee, I don't know. I mean, no one's super. I mean, Daniels, I don't know if he really counts, but I could see him getting back towards his rookie form, and then Jones, if he can. I think Jones might have been the real deal before he got healthy. Maybe not that
Mhm.
good, but at least good or better than he was with the Giants. Um, but no, it'll be interesting. There is no heir apparent right now. There is
Yeah,
no, you know, Jaden Daniels is probably the closest, but he's coming off a rough year. There is no, you know, Drake May, Caleb Williams of this group who like everyone's got their eyes on of being that next generation.
Mhm.
Um, Besides maybe Mendoza, but again, he's not going to be starting right off the bat. So,
Yeah,
well, I'll keep going. Even though I kind of touched on both our storylines. The most interesting one, also because I have some skin in it, is how do the two seeds, both of them from last year, how do they do this year? Um, Obviously talking about the Patriots in the AFC and the Bears in the NFC. Both have been a lot of target of regression talks. I'd say the Bears have probably been the favorite team that people will say will regress. Um, so how do they respond? I mean, the Bears went worse the first. I believe the Pats went worse the first last year. I can't remember if it was them or the Jets. They were not good the year before, to put
yeah,
it simply. I don't know if they were behind the Jets or not for worse. Anyways, now they both have first place schedules. Obviously, the Patriots already had a lot of discussion about their schedule last year,
yeah,
and the Bears had a harder schedule, but a lot of one score games, which can swing in the other direction a lot of
yep,
times. So, and both have this will be they'll both be third year quarterbacks now. So, as good as both of them might have looked last year, Caleb Williams had his moments, and then Drake May was runner up for MVP. How do they respond in year three now that everyone kind of has 2 seasons of tape on them? Um, I guess my spiel before I'll let you go is I think the Bears have they have a wider variance than the
okay,
Pats. I think they have a higher ceiling than the Patriots because I think it comes down to QB coach. I think Williams Johnson have a higher ceiling than May and Vrabel. I also think they have a lower floor. I could see the
okay,
Bears. I could see the Bears dropping off harder than the Patriots.
yeah,
Um, Also just because of history with the Bears, I wouldn't be totally shocked if they fall off the map. The Patriots, I don't see. I mean, it's hard to be better than 14-3.
yeah,
But in terms of quality of play, I don't see them being too much better than last year. I also don't see them being too much worse. I think they
yeah,
have the
that's
better
fair.
defense. I think they have the better defense, which always kind of establishes a baseline of quality that the Bears don't have. Their
Mhm.
defense, I think, could be really good. I think it could also be really sucky. Um, I think May's kind of a micro. May Williams is a microcosm of that. I think Williams has a much higher ceiling than May. I think May's at this point a safer pick to be good. Williams still has a few things he needs to clean up. I mean, May does too, but Williams does as well. So that's where I kind of sit. If I had to pick one, I have to pick the Bears just because of their history as a team. To regress more, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think either of them. I'd be I'd be surprised if the Pats go 14-3 again. I don't think that
Yeah.
means they'll be bad, but 14-3 is pretty damn insane. Especially if they're going to have a first place schedule now. The Bears could go 11-6 again. I think their peak is probably 12-5. So, even if they are a much better team, I don't see their wins bumping up that much. Um, so that's where I kind of land on those two. But yeah, really, I mean, and the Pats are just historically a much more well-run organization.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like I said, some of that history, even though it has nothing to do with the current roster or anything, and Williams, I think is already the most talented quarterback the Bears have ever had. Um, there's still that lingering feeling of are they going to Bears this up again, which you never know. So that's
Yeah.
where I kind of land on those two. I think they'll both be good, honestly. I don't think either of them are going to take too far a step back. Um, maybe the wins shrink a little bit just because of the
Yeah.
schedule, but in terms of quality of play, I don't see either taking a major step back, but it's still going to be interesting to watch because those two really came out of nowhere because they both had young, good quarterbacks, but kind of both of them surpassed all expectations last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll touch on the Bears first. I think I agree with everything you said. Like, I don't really expect either of those two teams to kind of have a huge fallback. Sure, they may not win as many games, but I expect them both to probably, be in the playoffs again. I think you're right because the Patriots, I think, have a more solid defense. Maybe, the floor for them is a lot higher than the Bears would be because it is going to be dependent on kind of, I guess to be fair to the Bears, like the offensive project with Johnson and Williams, it just worked a lot quicker than I think people were expecting it to. But that's not to say there's not still gaps to fill. I think because the play of Williams is still kind of a little bit inconsistent. I think that's the reason why there's still some questions about the Bears. But to be fair, we pretty much went the whole year last year doubting who they were, and they really never gave anybody a reason to
Yeah.
fully doubt them. Like every week we kept waiting for them to kind of fall off, and they may have had a couple clunkers in there, but for the most part, they were pretty solid the whole year and had a very respectable showing in the playoffs. So, I don't necessarily expect either of those two teams to kind of fall off completely. So for the Bears, and for them too, it's like this isn't their same division as in the past. Like the Packers are not the Packers of the past. The Vikings, I don't know what their overall record is going to be this year, but I think because of all the question marks at quarterback, I don't think they're going to be any sort of powerhouse. The Lions, I could see being really solid, but I think at worst, you're worrying about two other teams in that division. And
Yeah.
I think that but you could also say the same thing about the Patriots, who are not, other than the Bills, are probably not in a very strong, division. So that kind of gets me to one of my storylines was the two teams in the Super Bowl last year, the Patriots and the Seahawks. There was a little bit of talk for both teams. Was this year kind of like a fluke? And I know you really kind of leaned into that more with the Patriots. You really didn't buy all the success they had because of who they played. So this year, and maybe less so on the Seahawks side, but you wouldn't look at either of those two teams on paper and think that they were going to go to the Super Bowl. So is it possible to kind of recreate the success of last year? I think it's going to be hard to do for either of those two teams. One thing I am kind of curious to see is how does the whole Mike Vrabel off the field situation affect, their play on the field? I don't know that it's going to at all. I think luckily for the team, it happened a lot earlier in the off season. If this was happening in the last couple weeks, the last month, maybe it'd be a different story. But it's sort of started to die down, but that was a very embarrassing time, I think you could say, for him and probably for the team in general, just for that reason being in the headline and kind of how the story was just drip, drip, dripping. So I am kind of curious to see, maybe it's not going to have any impact, but if they're not playing well, you can sure as hell bet that the media is going to be discussing it as though it's having an impact. So I kind of think for those two teams, just answering the question, was last year a fluke? Was it not? I think is going to be interesting to see. I mean, I don't think the Patriots are going to, lose 3 games and, have 14 wins again, but are they going to have a solid, 11-6 season and make the playoffs? I would probably say I think that's going to happen. I'm not completely sold on their offense, but their defense is good enough to where I think they're going to be fine. And kind of the same thing with the Seahawks, like a little bit of moving pieces, but because of kind of their style of play, I think it's fair to say that they should be a pretty solid team again as well.
Yeah, I have more. It's a big surprise. I have more faith in the Seahawks. The only thing that gives me pause about the Seahawks is their division. I
Yeah.
mean, the Rams are stacked, and I do want to talk about them after the break, which is coming up shortly here. And the Niners, if they can stay healthy, which is never happens, but if they can stay relatively healthy, like
Yeah.
they're still a really damn good. I mean, they're still 12-5 last year. Like
Yes.
even with all their injury problems last year, they still finished with 12 wins, which is
Yeah.
better than the Bears did. And, we were just talking about how great a season the Bears had. So, yeah, so beat the Bears later in the season.
Yeah.
Um, that's the only thing that gives me pause about the Seahawks is, just how brutal, besides the Cardinals, their division's going to be.
Yeah.
Um, but I think Mike McDaniel is a really damn good football coach. And I think the
Yeah.
fact that he's a coordinator coach really helps. I think those coaches often are better for longevity than your more managerial coaches. Um, as for the Pats, I don't think the Vrabel thing will cause any issues. Like unless like you said they start struggling and then it
Yeah.
will be brought up again. Um, but yeah, I think this schedule is going to show a lot more issues, which might have been resolved in the off season, but still issues that they did have last year that might carry into this year just because, they're going to be playing first place teams now.
Yeah.
And I think they will play the Bears this year. I'm 90% certain. So, that's going to be an interesting one for the media. Um, and I don't know if they're a better team than the Bills or not, but the Bills have been more consistent. Obviously, the Bills are going on year number whatever of being a
Yeah.
pretty damn good football team, while the Pats just had one good year. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if I see either reaching the Super Bowl again. I don't see the Pats reaching the Super Bowl between the Bills, the Chiefs, if Mahomes comes back early enough and looks like Mahomes, and
Yeah.
then the Ravens could have a strong year if Jesse Minter works out and Lamar Jackson stays on the field. The Jags, you would think, get better, hopefully, as most young teams do. And obviously the Broncos are still very, very good. Um, the Seahawks, I think, have an easier path, but obviously they'll still have to get past the Rams, the Niners, whoever comes out on the NFC East, who's always usually pretty strong, whether it be the Eagles or the Cowboys.
Mhm.
And then, the Bears or, kind of a sleeping giant with the Lions. Um, I didn't put them as a storyline, but I am really interested to see what the Lions do this year.
Yeah.
Um, was last year just kind of a recaliber year. You lost both of your coordinators who were large parts of your team, especially Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson kind of made that team what it was, just offense because of how good his offenses were. So was it just hey, we need a reset after we lost those two guys, or is it not that I think Dan Campbell's a fraud. I have my own issues with Dan Campbell. I don't think he's a fraud, but like, is Campbell the right guy to lead the team when he doesn't have the best coordinator in football under him and another really good coordinator in Aaron Glenn?
Yeah.
So when he was there, obviously his New York tenure has not gone great so far. Um, So, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if the Lions jump back towards that top tier just because they still have the pieces. It's just can they figure out the coaching part of it? So,
Yeah.
um, so to answer your question, I don't think the Pats will get back there. I don't think either. Pardon me. I don't think either of them were a fraud. Um, I have more faith in the Seahawks just because they're always consistently solid,
Mhm.
um, especially now that Darnold seems to have figured it out. And again, I
Yeah.
really like Mike McDaniel as a coach. Um, I don't think the Pats, like I said during the Bears Pats thing, I don't think the Pats are going to fall off a cliff, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're the second wild card team, just uh, take a little bit of a step back. So not even a step back, but just, now that they're playing with the
Yeah.
rest of the big boys every game
Exactly.
instead of whatever cupcake schedule they had last year, how does that impact them? So, all right, I got two storylines left. So, we're going to take a quick break and then I think we should be able to knock these out when we come back. So, we'll be back in a second. And welcome back. Bubba and I have returned from our break and ready to continue going through our interesting storylines for the upcoming NFL season. I have two left. I'm assuming what you have two as well.
I got one left.
You got one left. All right. Well, I will kick us off then. Um, Kind of a theme with LA sports right now, but jumping to the Rams, the NFC LA team, did they I'm assuming they didn't see what Bubba just did, but it was not a very nice gesture. Um, did they buy themselves? I say buy, even though they didn't buy, they traded. But did they, in air quotes, buy themselves a ring this upcoming season? Obviously, probably made the biggest transaction of the offseason, trading for Myles Garrett, one of, if not, well, the best defensive player in the league right now, one of the best of all time. Um, Already a team who was very damn good last year, was 1 win away from the Super Bowl, probably would have won the Super Bowl if they made it. I would have taken them over the Pats. Um, Reigning MVP and Matt Stafford. I think I don't quote me on this, but I believe the stat was this is the first time ever that the reigning MVP and reigning Defensive Player of the Year were on the same
Um,
team.
uh,
Um, Again, don't quote me on that. I believe that's what the stat was. Just an elite team all the way around. Um, well, I guess the question is just what is your outlook on the Rams this season after acquiring the reigning Defensive Player of the Year?
yeah. Well, let me just get this middle finger on the record now that I'm actually on screen. I will just say, I think unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, like, yeah, obviously the Rams are a powerhouse team. I guess all it took for them to want to be competitive is to move out of St. Louis, and now all of a sudden they try every year. But yeah, I mean, you can look up and down the roster, and there's not really real weaknesses. And offensively, they have so many different playmakers, that could be, a factor in pretty much any game. So it's not going to be the same person every week. Defensively, obviously, they have a lot of playmakers. Now, I've also heard stuff about maybe Aaron Donald's going to come work out for him again. I mean, who knows, what I'm sure he's still in good shape, but like, if he came back, is he the Donald of old? I don't know, but it really doesn't matter because they have Myles Garrett. So yeah, I mean, my outlook on them is, yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say they're probably the favorites in the NFC. I mean, you could throw the 49ers up there as well, but I think the Rams on paper at least are a better team. So I guess the real question is going to be, you know, do they have any injuries throughout the year? Because I mean, if they get into the playoffs healthy, they're going to be pretty hard to beat. Obviously, the thing is you only have to beat them once, so that's really all that matters. But on paper, I don't think you could tell me that any other team is better than them. So as much as I hate to say it, yeah, they're a force to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention they have one of the best coaches in the league, and Sean McVay,
Yeah,
who's also just an outstanding offensive mind, which helps a lot. Like you said, offense up and down. Stafford, reigning MVP, their top two receiving duo as of now. Puka Nakua. We'll have to see what his status, where he is at the
where his
season
head's
starts.
at.
Just with everything that's gone on this offseason,
Yeah,
Devontae Adams. kind of changed roles last year, but was still an
Yeah.
elite in the role they used him in, which is kind of that end zone target. He was great at that.
Yeah.
Good tight ends. The offensive line was solid. And then, yeah, the defense, in addition to Myles Garrett, they traded for Trent McDuffie from KC, who's an outstanding cornerback. Um, I think besides, the obvious injury thing, like if Matt Stafford goes down week one, I don't think the season's in the toilet, but their Super Bowl chances probably are. I mean, I don't see Stetson Bennett or Ty Simpson leading them to a
Yeah.
Super Bowl. They could still be a good team for sure, just because of how much talent they have, but Super Bowl might be a little bit out the window. Um,
Yeah.
and even with everyone else completely healthy, like the Niners, like the Seahawks, if the Bears keep building, if the Lions bounce back, if whoever comes out of the NFC East is really strong, I don't know if I put any of those against the Rams.
Yeah.
Um, the two things that I think kind of will be their Achilles heel is first off, and I don't know the reason for it. I'm not that smart a football mind to point out this, and that, but like they had a really good team last year and they just kind of fell off for whatever reason.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, they weren't bad by any means, but they definitely had some eye scratching that would hurt, some head scratching losses, some really close playoff games against a Panthers team who wasn't all that outstanding and a Bears team who was in the postseason for the first time since
Yeah.
21, I think it was. And the other, so will something just kind of hit them? Maybe I don't know. And then the other thing is just come playoff time, you look at a lot of those good teams they might have to run into, and this was obviously it didn't affect them that it affected them, but it didn't ruin it. Was what happens if second round, third round of the playoffs they have to go to a northern team.
Yeah.
This is a team, I don't think they're like the Dolphins who are really
Yeah.
bad in cold games, but they're an indoor team located in California. Like
Yeah.
there's something to be said about, second, third round of the playoffs, you have to go to Chicago, you have to go to Seattle, both of which they did last year. They beat
Yeah.
Chicago, didn't beat Seattle. Would you have to go to Philly? Would would Detroit's indoors? Um,
Green
so
Bay, something like that.
Green Bay, yeah. Would you have to go to
Yeah.
Green? I don't know the path to get to
Maybe
Green
not.
Bay,
Yeah. But
but still,
theoretically, yeah.
would you have to go to Green Bay? And again, it hasn't hurt them that much, but it's still something to be I mean, I think that's the main reason the Bears were in that game. In
Yeah.
that last year's second round is Williams didn't have a great game. Like he showed up when he needed to with that just all-time throw to send the game to overtime, but like he didn't have a great game. The Rams clearly outplayed them. They still needed an overtime field goal to win.
Yeah.
So that's the only other thing that kind of gives me pause. And, the Super Bowl, you won't have to worry about it, but still going through the NFC, will you have to go to a really cold place? And how is that going to affect them? But other than those two things, like, yeah, on paper, there's nothing that really says why this team shouldn't go to the Super Bowl. Um, and it's just been a fascinating way to run a team. I mean, they've never really built for the future. They had a good, young, talented quarterback in Jared Goff who got into the playoffs. They said, screw you, we want Matt Stafford. They had
Yeah.
a good, talented, young front seven defensive player in Jared Verse. They said, screw you, we want Myles Garrett. Like, as their GM, president, whatever he is, said, fuck them picks. Like, and it's been sustainable somehow. Like I
Yeah.
don't know how, but they haven't hit that wall that those teams
Yeah.
usually hit
Exactly.
of. We haven't built for the future, and now we're at the future. They're not there yet. So I don't know how long the window's open with just Stafford's age, but um, yeah, again, besides those two reasons, which I don't even think are really legit reasons, I don't see why they can't at least get to the Super Bowl unless someone from the NFC just really pops off the page. The Niners could if they stay healthy, but that's always a huge question mark. So, yeah, that's my spiel on the Rams. All right, let's hear your last one.
Okay. I hate to pull a Chris Collinsworth, but I do feel like I have to talk about the Chiefs and Mahomes. I mean, obviously I'm not a huge fan of the Chiefs, but I do think it's an interesting storyline to see, okay, Patrick Mahomes is back this year. We're going to see how he looks in a game situation. Some of the videos we've seen from the practice fields are not super encouraging, but at the same time, it's Patrick Mahomes. So I think it's safe to say that we can still expect him to come back and play at a high level, but I do also think it's safe to say that, the Chiefs are not the same team they were a couple years ago, and that it can't just be him leading them, to this dynasty status that they were seemingly a part of for a couple years. So I'm kind of curious to see how the Chiefs kind of look this year. Like, I mean, if Mahomes is back and healthy for the whole year, I'm sure they could make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be scaring as many people this year. And so it'll kind of just be interesting to follow that storyline because obviously, a couple years ago, that was the talk of the town. Like that he was kind of the main draw for a lot of the media, and so it'll kind of be interesting to see now if he's still playing at a high level, but maybe not taking as much of the spotlight, kind of seeing what effect that has on the Chiefs and then kind of how that goes. So, I mean, obviously not something I really give too much of a shit about, but I do think it'll be kind of interesting to see how the year goes because it's definitely going to be talked about differently than, the Chiefs have been, a couple years ago. Obviously last year they weren't particularly good even before he got hurt. And then, it kind of got derailed from there. So I think that's an interesting storyline to watch, at least from a general NFL perspective, even though personally, I'm not that invested in it.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking through their depth chart. I think last year was a big telltale sign of where they are as a team of, look, you lose Patrick Mahomes, you're going to
Yeah.
be worse. That is not an unfathomable concept.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that they weren't even really competitive without
No.
him.
Yeah,
And
not
these
even
these
close.
really good teams, like they find ways. Yeah, maybe they won't go to the Super Bowl, but your starter goes down. These really good teams find ways to still be competitive.
Yeah.
I just said it about the Rams. If Stafford goes down, yeah, I think their Super Bowl chances are shot, but I don't think they're going to be a pushover, even with
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett or Ty Simpson. The
Yeah.
Niners are the epitome of that. Yeah, Brock Purdy goes down. They're probably not going to the Super Bowl, but whether it be Mac Jones, Sam Darnold when he was there, whoever it was, they found ways to keep being
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah.
The Chiefs really didn't. And this year, I don't see either Fields or Garrett Nussmeier kind of taking that over and being, they might be improvements over who they had last year, but they weren't. I don't think they're going to be, good enough to really carry a roster that isn't super inspiring.
Yeah.
Their wide receiving core with Rasheed Rice and Xavier Worthy, both of whom have off the field issues. I think both of them do. Worthy definitely does. I think Rice does too, right? I'm not making that up. Rice ran into some trouble.
Yeah, he did, to say
Kenneth
the
Walker.
least.
Kenneth Walker is a nice addition to the backfield. The offensive line isn't what it used to be. Um, the defense will be solid, but Chris Jones, who is a stalwart, he's getting up
Yeah.
there in age. Like, um, you know, for them to be a true Super Bowl contender, it's going to take a Herculean effort out of Mahomes, and coming off a pretty bad injury. I don't think
Yeah.
he has that in him. If he was perfectly healthy, he could probably carry this roster places it wouldn't be, but he's not going to be perfectly healthy. Even if he's on the field performing, he's not going to be, the Pat Mahomes of a couple of years ago. Maybe in another year or two, he'll get back to that place, but I doubt that happens this year. So, like you said, I think playoffs are very possible for them with just
Yeah.
how kind of up in the air I think the rest of the AFC is. But unless he comes out and looks like prime Pat Mahomes, it's not. Their ceiling is pretty limited.
Yeah.
We haven't even mentioned Travis Kelce, and I think that's for a good reason because he didn't
Yeah.
have that good a year. Like
Yeah.
he's not the Travis Kelce he used to be. So, also a married man now. Anyways, I don't know. I'm not. Like I said, unless Mahomes comes back and looks as good, if not better than he's ever looked before, you know, playoffs very possible. Super Bowl, I don't think they have it above the Broncos. I don't think they
Yeah.
have it above Bills, the Ravens if the coach works out and Lamar stays healthy. Even the Pats, assuming they don't fall off a cliff, I don't think they're better than them. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting year. And how old is how old is Mahomes at this point? 30. So, it's going to be this year slash the next few years are going to be kind of decision time, I think, for them. Because, I mean, he's 30, which isn't young, but quarterbacks, like, he's still got a number of good years left, supposedly, assuming this
Yeah.
injury isn't as devastating as it's made out as it could be. Um, so do they decide to pivot one of these years of, all right, this isn't our year. Let's really focus on the next couple years while Mahomes is still, you know, a very good quarterback, maybe not MVP, but a very good quarterback, which he could be for a number of years, only being 30. And quarterbacks, assuming they're protected, have a long shelf life. Um, Look at Matt Stafford. So, um, yeah, very interesting year in KC. Um, Soon to be KC, sorry, soon to be KC, Kansas. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. So, all right. My last question isn't even related to the play or teams. It's kind of more of a general trend with the NFL, which I've found fascinating over the last couple of years, which is when slash will we hit critical mass on the scheduling or just the breaking point on the scheduling?
Yeah.
That's been, and I'm probably in the minority here because look, I love football as much as the next guy. I love other sports too. And the advancement of the NFL schedule has kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Not necessarily adding an extra game, but now we have Christmas Day games, which we never had unless Christmas was on a football
Yeah.
day. We have
Yeah.
Christmas Eve games. We have obviously you have the Thanksgiving Day games. You have
Yeah.
Black Friday games. You have, we're playing football on fucking Wednesday now.
Yeah.
Not to mention there's all the European expeditions, which I think is quite frankly stupid.
Yeah.
I don't like the European games. I don't think there's a market, but there's not a capital M market over there, and it just throws
Yeah.
teams in flux. The South American games, I don't see the point. Like it's been one of my least favorite trends with the NFL is just how much football can we play, basically? Like how many, we have weeks now where we're playing football almost every single day, like
Yeah.
of the week. And I think that kind of ruins, growing up, we kind of caught the tail end of the traditional schedule, which
Yeah.
is like Thursdays, Sundays, and Mondays were great. Like
Yeah.
you waited almost a whole week between Monday and not a whole week minus the
Yeah.
weekend between Monday and Thursday to watch NFL football. Now you don't have to do that because we're playing games on Wednesday. And
Yeah.
no, it's not every week, but still, like,
Yeah.
and as an NBA guy, like I like the NBA more than I like the NFL as a league. Um, the Christmas Day games really piss me off. Like this is a personal gripe, but Christmas Day was always NBA. Like that's what it was. I remember waking up, you're watching NBA from the morning until night. Now we have three football games on Christmas Day because Netflix spent some money on it.
Yeah.
It's like you guys get Thanksgiving, like let someone else have Christmas. Let someone else have, the NHL has always been New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. Well, now the NFL is probably gonna, kind of encroach on that. So I don't know. And I know I'm in the minority because people who love the NFL and love football, like they just want more football.
Yeah.
And there's something nice about it. Like I like football too, but it seems like it's losing its identity a little bit. And as someone who likes football, but I don't live and breathe football, between this and just the college schedule nowadays as well, like
Yeah.
by the end of the year, I think I said this during the college season, whenever we talked about college or the playoffs, like I'm just drained of football by the end of the season. Like the NFL is playing multiple times a week more than they used to. College is going until what, February? So I don't know. It's just a little much for me. I might be again, I'm probably in the minority in that, but that's my old man yelling at clouds argument is it's like let's tone it back a little, guys. And I think at a certain point it's going to be diminishing returns too.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
Especially like the European games. I don't get those.
Yeah.
I think they're dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I you brought up some interesting points. I mean, for me, it's a little bit different for me too because I'm probably, I would say, more of a college fan than the NFL. And,
Right.
I've, usually I'm watching baseball until, the baseball season's over. So I'm really only
Right.
tuning in weekly November through January, for that. So I don't really mind so much, all the games of the week because when I was younger, maybe I'd watch the Monday night game or the Thursday night game, but I really even don't now. I'll pretty much only watch on Sundays as is. So it's like I don't really if other people like it, that's great. I will say I don't like, but this is also, it's not just the NFL that does this, it's all the sports, like all the games that are on random streaming. So, like, if you
Hmm.
don't have Prime Video, you're not watching Thursday Night Football. Those sorts of things, kind of irk me. Baseball does it with the Apple TV games. I think that's kind of
Hmm.
stupid. I agree with you. I don't really see a whole point for especially with how many games they do in London and now all over Europe. I don't know that there is that much of a market for that. And if there was, they can start their own football league. Like
They do have their own football league, and no one cares. There is there
yeah,
well
yeah,
there
yeah,
was an NFL Europe, and there are
yeah.
still leagues over there, but no one gives
So,
a shit.
I mean, it doesn't really, I don't really care, but I can't imagine the players. I mean, other than traveling to a place they probably don't see very often, it's not great for their health and recovery, I wouldn't think, at least the
No.
Europe. I do think some of the, spots, like if you're going to South America or like Mexico once a year, I think that's kind of cool. That's at least a little bit closer. But still, I don't know that there's really a strong market for that. So I I don't really know what to say on that. I obviously I think they're doing it for the fans, otherwise they wouldn't have done it, but they're also doing it because they think there's a market for it, at least to make more money. But I mean, let's be honest, some people are way more diehard, NFL fans than we are, and they probably like being able to spend 5 of their days a week watching that rather than the traditional three. For
Yeah.
us, really, it just feels like there's not really a market for that because we don't, want to set aside 5 days a week to watch the league. So
Yeah.
I don't really have a problem with it, at least in terms of the, expanding schedule and days of the week. But I do take your point as fair, especially with some of the European games, which at this point I think has gone over the top.
Yeah, and staunch defenders will probably be like, oh, the NBA does games in X, Y, and Z, and the MLB does games in, they do games in London and they do games in um the Asian Pacific, whether it be Korea, Japan, wherever. Um, oh, you're frozen. You hear me? No, we lost Bubba. Oh no. We have to restart the whole episode. Oh, I hear you.
Sure.
There he
No,
is. He's back.
the internet went out for a second. Mhm.
Um, what was I saying? No, I was saying that, staunch defenders of the overseas games, who I don't know if they're out there, but they'll probably say like, well, look at the MLB. They do games in the Asian Pacific. Look at the
Yeah,
NBA. They'll go over, they don't do it often, but sometimes they'll go overseas. Look at hockey. They play games in Europe. And the thing is, like, those sports have bases over there.
markets. Yeah, exactly.
Uh, Baseball is huge in the Asian Pacific,
In
in
Japan,
Korea and
yeah, Korea,
Japan.
yeah,
NBA basketball is huge everywhere, and hockey's big in Europe. So,
yeah,
um, NFL is the very unique of the big four in that it's an American, North American, but more specifically American sport. Like
yeah,
there aren't major European leagues, there aren't major Asian leagues. If they want to do international, I say international, even though I don't know if you would consider it, like go to Canada because they're like the only other country that has a semi-respectable pro league in
yeah,
football. Play a game in Toronto. Like it's not going to wear down the players a lot. There's a market
yeah,
there. Like that would be the smart decision. So, and to be fair, I have the same problem with the MLB going to London. I don't really see the point of the MLB playing games in
yeah,
London. So,
yeah.
Japan, Korea, great. London, I don't
It
get
doesn't
that.
really,
So,
yeah,
that's my that's my, and like you said, like I can't imagine the players love it. I mean, yes, they get to go to London or Germany or wherever
Yeah,
they go. They can do that in the off season. I
if they
mean,
really want to.
I
Yeah,
mean, I know some of those guys are fighting for their lives, some of the special teamers, but
yeah,
there are quite a few number of NFL players who have the money to go to London in the off season. So,
yeah.
um, that's my, and yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, I'm not the biggest NFL fan out there, so I'm sure someone who lives and breathes the NFL, they love that they can watch football 4 times a week on 4 days of the week. But you know, it feels like I have the same feel about expansion teams. It feels like expansion in the wrong way. Like instead of strengthening the product that's already there, they're just going to start spreading it out more and more. So, um, and say you're a Bears fan and they're playing on Wednesday of Christmas week, they're going to watch the Bears on Wednesday. They might not watch football on Sunday. So, that was frozen again. That Webster internet is absolutely fighting for its life right now. We're going to let him come back and then continue. Probably wrap up here soon because I think their internet is shitting bricks right now. Wow. What a vacant office. And I know no one can see what I'm looking at because I'm talking right now, but this is, oh, now he's just a B logo. See, oh, he's coming back. There he is again.
Fuck.
All right. This might be the sign to start wrapping things up. So, anyways, I think the NFL is just getting too big for its britches a little bit. As someone who likes watching other sports, I don't appreciate that, you know, NBA on Christmas Day is getting overshadowed by Netflix games. So that's my spiel.
Fair enough.
Um, all right. Before we wrap up, before your internet blows a gasket again, um, any other any other things you want to get off your chest for the upcoming NFL season, considering we might not record for a little bit?
Not really. I mean, we'll kind of get there when we get there. I would say I'm probably a little bit more, excited, as I said, for the college season to start, but it'll be interesting. I do think there's a chance to see, some newer, I think, blood, I guess you could say, kind of like last year. I don't think there's a really an established favorite outside of maybe the Rams. So I think, especially in the AFC, you could kind of see the continuation of some newer kind of blood start to rise and see what new teams. I think the Jags are going to be an interesting team to watch since they should be pretty good again.
Yeah, we didn't even really talk about them, but kind of the forgotten
Yeah.
star, one of the stars of last year who people just aren't talking about because it's also Jacksonville. So whatever.
Yep.
All right, well that'll do it for this episode. Um, I was telling Bubba beforehand, I don't know when we'll record again. The programs I use to edit these expires at the end of this week, and I don't know when I'm going to get them back, but we'll be back at some point, I'm sure. We're not dead forever, hopefully. Um, but until then, everyone enjoy the rest of whatever day you're watching this on. Bubba, enjoy the rest of your fine Tuesday. Go, I'm not going to say that anymore because they kind of did me dirty, but um, go relax men's golf. I'll say that. So, um,
Sounds good.
all right, we'll see everybody next time, whenever that is.